All right, I am recording. Thank you for turning your videos on. Um, Good to see so many people today. Um, all right, so my name is Kirsten Cook. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm a recent environmental studies and Spanish graduate from UCSB. I've been employed by Adventure Programs for 4 years, um, and I'm kind of helping them get started with workshops online before I sign off as a staff after graduation. I would like to start off by acknowledging that we are fortunate to be able to study and work on the unceded, traditional, and ancestral territory of the Chumash people. Much of the knowledge that I am about to share comes from traditional ecological knowledge preserved and passed down through thousands of years by these peoples and many others throughout the country and world. I hope that this presentation can do justice to that tradition of sharing knowledge about how to live off of, and protect the land, while also acknowledging that the original inhabitants of the land were irrevocably harmed by those who arrived here on their territory. Um, I would like to start off with some gratitude. So, if you can share something you're feeling grateful for today, or this week, or this month, by annotating, if you go to the top of your computer screen and click, I believe you'll see Kirsten is sharing her screen, and you can click the little more button. And at the bottom of that, you should be able to annotate, and you can either use a text box and type, or you can write it on, however you want to do it. But I'm personally feeling really grateful for my friends Sophia and Rima for being here today and joining me. A little more support. Um, yeah. If you can't figure out the annotation, let me know. Oh dear. Is anyone able to annotate? Or people? Ah, there we go. Friends, a new job. Awesome. Someone's mom. Oh, thank you for appreciating me. I don't know how to open the chat bar while I'm sharing the screen. I'm like, or can someone send a chat to me real quick? Just so I can have it. There we go, chat. Or not. I don't know. Sorry, one sec, y'all. Usually this chat is open to me. There we go. Right. Alrighty. Thank you for sharing, everybody. Now I'm gonna get started on our third workshop with the Nature Awareness and Eco Adventure Education series on how to identify plants. Today's workshop is going to focus on just that. I have several kind of tried and true methods that I'd like to share with y'all. Some of them are more suited to beginner plant and oh my goodness, I'm really struggling this morning. Whew. Some of them are more suited to beginner plant identifiers, and some are for people that know a lot about botany. And anyone can really do either as long as you have a dictionary next to you. Please feel free to type any questions, comments, or concerns into the chat, or if I invite you to turn your mics on, you're welcome to say it out loud as well. Yeah, so I have quite a bit of experience in plant-related fields, so I'm decently qualified to be teaching you all this stuff. I've taken several classes on botany horticulture, and I'm a landscaper in my free time. And I've also spent 4 years on this project that you can see on the screen here, basically identifying, mapping, and writing descriptions of native and local plants and how they're edible, useful, or medicinal for human beings. So if you guys are interested in checking that out at some point, I'm going to share it in the chat, although the chat is hidden from me again. I don't know why. There we go. All right. You should have the ability to see that now. All right, getting started on the identification techniques I have for you today. I have 6 main ones. They're more or less in order, like from top to bottom of ones I'd recommend for beginners and all the way down to ones that I recommend for people that are probably more advanced at plant identification than I am. If you're at that level, I'd love you to teach me more about plants because that's impressive. Did anyone happen to bring a plant or a couple plants that they wanted me to identify? Just in case I can fit them into the presentation or I can do them afterwards. I'm gonna take that as no. If you come up with one by the end of the presentation, let me know. All right, technique number 1. Thanks, Soph. Technique number 1, using field guides with pictures. This first one is pretty simple as long as you have a field guide. If you don't have one, you'd have to go buy one or borrow one from a friend. But the one I have here is the National Audubon Society Field Guide to Trees in the Western region. So basically you want to find a guide that has the type of plants that you're looking at, if it's a tree, a shrub, a flower, a vine even, maybe specific to pond regions or areas that are drier like deserts. And then you also want to make sure you have it like geographically, so either California or the West or the Rocky Mountains, like wherever you're trying to identify that plant, you'd be best finding a guide to that area. Guides don't have every single plant that you're ever going to see, especially really rare ones. They're not going to have those unless you're looking at a rare guidebook. So keep in mind that you might not find your book or your plant in the book, but there are plenty of other ways to find the plant. To use a field guide with pictures, it's pretty easy. I would recommend you just open it to the pictures pages and scroll through them, flip through the pages until you find a plant that looks just like your plant. And then you want to go to the page number that's underneath or to the side of that picture and go to the page and look up that description. If it seems like it's your plant based on geographical location, color, shape, whatever, it's probably right. Now, if you don't have a field guide or you couldn't find your plant, the next step I would say is to try Googling it, honestly. I would, for this technique, just put in like the most basic description you can with the most details that you can. You don't need any fancy terms unless you know fancy botanical terms. And yeah, basically put in like colors, how many petals there are, if it's got leaves, if it's a shrub, kind of basic information like that. And especially for common plants, you can find them on Google. So the example I give you guys here today is this flower. Very lovely. I found this in my, not in my yard, but in the nature of California. And so what I did was I typed in a super basic like description of it. It's purple, it's a flower, it was native to California. I know that because I've seen it all over the like wild parts of California, but never in town. And it had 6 petals. And by that description, Google was able to tell me it was a blue dick, which is the second flower on the search, which was pretty cool. Sometimes you don't get that lucky and you have to scroll for, 500 pictures and you're like, oh, that's the one. Unless your search, like terms that you put in are super detailed, you're probably only going to get one picture that comes up for your plant. So keep that in mind, you gotta look closely. Moving on to the third technique I have for you today is to use a plant search engine. I don't love these. They're not my favorite. Some people swear by them. In my experience, though, unless you like perfectly put in the right amount of information in the correct way, you're not going to find your plant, or you're going to spend 30 minutes scrolling through images and reading descriptions. You're like, that's not the one. And the pictures usually aren't very good. But some people swear by things like iNaturalist, which you can use for plants and animals and fungi and you name it. I, again, don't love it. I've noticed people put incorrect like identifications on there, and so I'm just like, what? I mean, it doesn't really help us. But it's a really cool example of citizen science, and you can participate if you're good at identifying plants or animals. You can help other people's identify theirs. You can post your own pictures and be like, hey, please help, what is this? And you can just scroll through people's beautiful pictures of nature. Yeah, another good one, if you do want to use a search engine for plants, CalFlora, CalScape. You can put in information, the duration of the flower, what kind of plant it is it native or not, where did you find it, what altitude even. You can put in a common name if you kind of know a little bit of information about it, and this can help, but this is another instance of if you put something wrong at all, you're not going to find your plant. So if you don't know enough information about the plant based on its like growing type, it's not super helpful. Cool. Does anyone have any questions about these first three techniques? You can share it in the chat. You can say it out loud. Let me know. Okay, Sophia shared, or I've heard of an app where you take a photo of the plant and it automatically IDs it. Do you know what that app is? I think iNaturalist has some aspect that's kind of like that. Like it has some AI. I feel like I might have heard of another one as well, but I don't know exactly. I think Google is working on that. Like Google Photo Scanner. I don't know. It's on the non-iPhone phones. But I don't think they're anywhere near that level of AI, like intelligence, unless they're super common plants. So yeah, I'm not certain. Thanks for asking. Did anyone else have anything? Cool. Well, if you have something come up, you can type it in the chat. Okay, so for the next three techniques, you're gonna need more kind of botanical plant knowledge, or at least know how to look up that information so that you can search for those plants. So the basic botanical terms that I think you really should know, or that you should know how to learn about them. What kind of plant are you looking at? Is it a tree, a shrub, a vine, an herb, a liana? Is it maybe not even a plant? Fungi aren't plants. You know, knowing things like that can be really helpful, just like growth patterns, the shape of the plant. And sometimes just looking at the plant isn't necessarily enough. Like some plants have a bunch of different growth patterns, and so that can actually make it harder if you put in shrub, but it's really normally a tree, or it's normally a vine, but somehow it is in a tree shape here. So yeah, something to think about. Something else to think about flowers are probably the most important identification part of a plant, um, because flowers are very distinctive within families and sometimes even more distinctive within genuses. Um, and so if you see a flower, that is focus on that before you focus on the rest of the plant. Um, and your most important things on the flower for a basic identification are going to be the color or colors. How many of things does it have? Like how many petals, how many anthers, how many sepals? The sepals are like the little green petal-like leaves underneath the the petals usually. Sometimes the petals aren't petals, they're sepals, but that's like next level. Um, but yeah, so super important. Focus on flowers. And then beyond the flowers, you're going to want to focus on the leaves. That's your next most important. Um, are they simple or compound? Compound is kind of like one leaf has been split into many little leaves. So technically, like this here is one leaf with leaflets, or each little tiny leaf. Some plants have needles instead of leaves, or not necessarily instead of leaves, but that's what you call them. There's also parts of leaves that can be important, although that's usually getting really detailed, and maybe you don't need to know that in a basic, more common plant. And leaf arrangement can be helpful, especially if you're trying to get it down to species in families that are kind of confusing. Um, don't worry, there is more to know about leaves if you were worried. Um, there are leaf forms, apexes, margins, and bases. In my opinion, the most important part of this would be your form, because those can be pretty distinctive, and the leaf margin, which is basically the edge of the leaf. Like, is it toothed? Is it loby? Is it just like super smooth? Um, and finally, you have venation, which is how the veins are formed, and how deep they are, and you know, like I don't know. These are kind of a good examples, but there's other things. There's obviously other things about leaves and plants that are can be needed. But I think these are the most important ones for now. Okay, so now we're moving past botanical terms into more techniques. Your fourth technique is to Google a basic botanical description of your plant. So the last Googling was just a basic description without like fancy vocabulary. And this one we're kind of moving into more botanical vocabulary. Um, I believe I only use terms that I just mentioned um, with the like different kinds of leaves and flower parts when I searched this plant, which some of you actually might recognize. I don't know. Um, but so I searched glossy red-green lobed leaves. So we heard the lobed part up above in the leaf margin. The pinnate venation, so we learned about that in the venation section, and it's a shrub in California. This worked, thankfully. This search worked. Oh, sorry, I don't know what just happened. I was here. The shrub. The search found poison oak. I don't know if y'all could tell, as the first image, but none of the other images were poison oak. So that kind of tells you that maybe my description of it wasn't detailed enough, or maybe there's a better way to describe it. But it did show up, which is kind of nice. Yeah. Your fifth technique is get even more detailed in your Googling. And these are terms that I did not discuss because I didn't even know what I was looking up until I like searched up like, all right, what is this thing on this part of the flower? Why does it do this? What does it do? And then I had to find those botanical terms before I could even search this plant. Again, many of you might know this plant, but I didn't when I was searching for it. Oh, I think somebody's unmuted. Sorry, I'm gonna mute you all. Mute. Oh, all right. Yes, so some of you may know this plant already. I didn't when I looked it up. But basically, some plants are really hard to find unless you get more detailed, more botanical. And then I kind of wanted you to be aware that even common plants can sometimes be a little bit harder to identify without those fancy terms. So for this one, I searched pale blue flower, which, yeah, okay. Raised 5 white appendages, which are these like little funky bits around here, and 5 yellow fornices, which are the bits around the center. Oh, actually, no, I believe the fornices are inside that yellow center. And lo and behold, this search actually showed up with 5 different Google images all in the first row. It was a forget-me-not, which you've probably heard of or seen in like little bouquets that somebody gave you or that you gave someone. So I don't know, I thought that was pretty cool. And okay, our final technique, use a field guide with a dichotomous key. This is like beyond knowing botanical terms into like you got your 6 degrees in botany and are like PhD certified, whatever. Super complicated. There's almost never pictures, or even like drawings, and the words are like this long, super sciencey. I would have a very hard time using one of these, but if you know all these terms, it might be helpful for you. Yeah, so it gets some families, you need to get into this level of detail if you are like trying to get down to species level. But like words like tetramerous, auriculate, fasciculate, raceme, I don't even know how to say them. Nectarious disc lobes, like, yeah, it'd be very impressive. If you could do that. I'm pretty much done. If anyone had any questions for me, let me know. Or send it in the chat. The bonus technique, if none of those things worked, you can just ask an expert. I'm happy to answer questions about plants. You might have friends, you might have teachers. iNaturalist, you can post your picture. Kind of lots of options. Yeah, did anyone have any questions or have a plant they wanted to know more about, or I don't know. Oh, I will turn the recording on.